just waiting for other people to then externally stimulate.
People just live their whole life reacting to everything.
Still of mind is also just as powerful as still of body.
It just gets overwhelming at some point.
All right, Bryon. First of all, I want to say thank you for spending some time, even though you've been busy the last couple of weeks. I appreciate you spending time to be on this podcast with me and sharing your insights. Again, Bryon Sweno, Sweno Visuals, Sweno Creative. If you haven't looked him up yet, go do that, because he's the reason why these podcasts look the way they look and sound the way they sound. And my goal is to help him do everything possible to be in front of more of you. So go check him out now. Go look him up on social media. Go look him up on YouTube. You've been listening. You know he's promising YouTube.
It's coming. It is coming.
That's going to be the next. Hope is a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. It's coming, because it's been coming for a minute.
No, it is coming.
Okay.
It is currently being planned, worked on. It's coming.
Okay. You heard it first.
I'll announce the date as soon as I have one.
Okay.
Because I would love any of you guys to go check it out.
Yeah.
If you're interested in anything to do with photography, video production, sound production, we're going to cover it all. And also the business side, the thing that a lot of people don't show. That's the thing that interests me the most, is the thought process behind stuff. Yeah. I love the dialogue of thought processes and stuff. A lot of creatives don't show that side. But why did you even take that photo? You know, like, what made you want to take it? Yeah. That's the stuff I love to see from other people. So that's the stuff I'm going to be putting out. So if any of you guys are interested in that, check it out. Yeah. Yeah. And we all know the story about not giving people the fish, but teaching them how to fish. And teaching the thought process that has led you to your success is pretty cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. So I feel like I don't necessarily always give you enough credit for doing everything that you're doing here. Other people say it too. I'm seeing people all over the nation talk about the quality of the work that you're doing, that we're doing, that people are saying these episodes are better because you're on them. So I'm grateful for that. And so we've been kind of bouncing around a bunch of different topics. Again, we always kind of do a pre-show podcast probably. But this week, I want to talk about something that I think is really going to be powerful for a lot of people that are moving all the time, and they feel like movement is progress all the time. They feel like they're not doing everything fast enough. They're not doing enough. This idea of stillness, and then also really poking at, why do we find ourselves avoiding stillness? There's some science out there that I'll talk a little bit about as well. But kind of, what is your first thought when you think about, one, are you comfortable being still? And if you're not comfortable, tell me about that tension you feel whenever you start to recognize that you are actually standing still. Maybe it's mentally, maybe it's physically. Tell me how you think about stillness and how it shows up for you. Well, stillness for me, I just told you I'm going to take this in a different direction a little bit. Yeah. It's even the thought of pausing while you're talking. Like, people say or ah, or, use all the filler words because they're uncomfortable with a 2-second silence. That's something I've worked on a lot. And being in front of the camera never came natural for me. I've made probably 1,000 YouTube videos over the years. And one thing that allows you to do is see yourself and hear yourself. And the things you don't like, you can pick out, and self-edit yourself a little bit while you're talking. And so a lot of people are uncomfortable with any moment of silence, so they fill it with an If you take that and compound that with your whole life and all the things going on and, running a business or running a family and a household and kids and sports and whatever, all the things, you never really get a chance unless you make time to be still and for stillness. And we just came back from vacation. This is my first day back, and my energy level is about at a 0 right now. So I just said an right there. That's just because my brain's trying to catch up, though. A lot of the times people use vacation as their stillness, like they'll go, you take a step out of your real world, you go onto the beach for a week or do whatever for a week. For us, it was about the opposite. So it was probably even more crazy and hectic than our normal life while we were on vacation. Apparently everyone and their brother and his whole side of the family wanted to come to the beach exactly where we were the week that we were there. Yeah. So we didn't get as much stillness as we would have liked. And that's kind of affected how my energy level, and I'm one of those people that run 100 miles an hour at all times.
Yeah.
Just because I love the sensation of doing that and proving to myself all the time that I can do things. But there is a really big power in stillness. And some of the ways that I incorporate that into my life is like whenever I drive my car. Rather than blasting music, I drive in silence. It's weird for people when they ride with me, but I'm like, if you're riding in the car with me, I want to have a conversation with you while we drive in,
Yeah.
Not that I'm just like, grandma Sunday driving, but if I'm by myself in the car, I am just driving. I'm not listening to music most of the time these days. Used to, I would be jamming out, doing all the things, but these days we got 3 kids at home, 4 dogs. I got Ramsey here at the office. And so nothing's ever quiet in my life. Yeah. Everything's always chaotic and going crazy. And so I really have to seek out stillness to get it. Sometimes I'll come here in the morning and like during school, I'll drop the kids off and then come here and no one's here yet. And I would just sit back in my office with the lights off. It's pitch black in there. There's no windows and just silence. And I would sit there and think about like what I needed to do for the day, or just see what sort of thoughts come into your head, whenever you're still. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't do any stillness, and they avoid stillness at all costs. They don't make time for it because they might be worried about what thoughts would come into their head,
Yeah.
Maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's honestly one of the things that I was going to kind of lean into a little bit too, is there's a lot of times people say that they actually have a fear of just being alone in their own thoughts. And there's actually been some evidence-based or some research studies actually that show that they were just having people go sit in a room by themselves with nothing. They weren't a straitjacket. They were just at a table like this for 15 minutes by themselves. And they had, I forget, it was like 50 people or something like that. 35 people said absolutely not. 10 people tried it and actually did it, but it was stressful. And 5 people actually made it all the way through out of 50 people. So you think like 10% of the people, and you think it wouldn't be that hard to sit there for 15 minutes by yourself. That tells me a lot about, granted, I know those are small sample size, but it tells me a lot about how our uncomfortableness these days, because we don't know ourselves well enough, that we rely on other people to fill our identity, or the things that we aren't willing to talk about. Last week we talked about hard conversations. The things that we aren't willing to have, those conversations with ourselves, the things we're not willing to own, things we're not willing to heal from. It's really easy just to let external noise then distract our brain from that and not actually be anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so it's this idea that this constant pursuit of more, this becoming, this pursuing, and like you're doing this, I'm doing this, we're all doing this. It can kind of run away from us a little bit because our body will just adapt to whatever we ask it to do, but we're never really our full selves if we never actually understand ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when you sit down and you think about so I do meditation, I do cold plunges. We've talked about this already, but I do that. Just this idea of unplugging. That's typically what people do on vacation. And I did a talk last week for the Jeff City Chamber of Commerce. There's Women's Connect Network. It was a group of incredibly powerful women, smart, multifaceted lives and all these different things, and just trying to find balance in an unbalanced world is basically kind of what we talked about. So work-life integration. Mm-hmm. But the number one thing that for me that really helps me in those busy moments is being still and unplugging. And the reason why vacation most of the time is recharging for people is that's when you're actually in balance. Mm-hmm. So many people think when I go on vacation, I'm not going to think about work and I don't care about work. I actually want to push back on that and say vacation may actually be the time that you rebalance yourself to think about work as often as you need to, mm-hmm. and not have it become your whole self, have it become part of who you are. Now, granted, I get there's people who are super passionate, have to do things in the evening, right? You're doing this with me and an evening and an off time when we don't normally do these. Mm-hmm. But there's also something really powerful for understanding yourself well enough to know, when do you feel like you're reacting to people more than you respond to them? because you're always in control. Nobody can make you feel anything without your permission. So you're always in control of that. And like this skill and at this point, superpower is kind of what I've joked about of being self-aware. So I had friends in town this past weekend, and I recognized I needed to practice stillness. And I'm still always working on this. I meditate every day. I unplug. I start my morning with the first 30 minutes of my morning. I wake up at 4 a.m. First 30 minutes.
Nuts.
First 30 minutes of my day is complete silence. It's no screens. I let my dogs out. I take care of them, and then I just sit with them. And it was uncomfortable in the beginning, but it really just allowed me to think without external stimulation. It really made me think about, who am I? What do I want to do? Who am I grateful for? That's when I sit down and do my gratitude practices, and kind of just this, like, how am I feeling today? What do I want to do? Am I doing things that are going to, like, it was more of like a self-reflection moment. Mm-hmm. So people struggling with journaling, it's probably because you're trying to squeeze it in all these moments of doing, and this idea that I heard, it's not really super powerful for me, but maybe this will resonate with people. The words human being is the key word there. We're meant to be, as humans, we're meant to be still, not human goings. We're not human becomings. It's just being something, being who you are, being with yourself. Because really, once you understand yourself more, then you start to learn more about other people. But if you constantly don't know yourself and you're adapting to everybody else around you, because you're not still and you don't have a sense of who you are, then everybody else, their favorite music, their favorite food, the way they talk, the way they do everything is going to then impact you, and you don't even know it. Mm-hmm. Because you're not full of who you are. You're just waiting for other people to then externally stimulate. Same thing with music for me. Like, I love music, but I know how it affects me emotionally. It either ramps me up, gets me deep thinking, slows me down. So now I listen to there's a station called Weightless or Lo-Fi or something where it's just music and beat in the background, but there's no stimulation for me. So it's like a high enough frequency where the brain's kind of at a peak state. But I even combine stillness with that. Stillness doesn't mean silence. That's another separation I want to kind of have people, because people sitting in a room by themselves completely quiet for 15 minutes would probably freak people out. Right? Not everybody. But you in the car, there's a sound still to some of the nature and window down or, the road or whatever it is. Yeah. But being still, I really just challenge people. When's the last time you actually just sat still and just were with yourself? Because as we learn to be more with ourselves, we will learn and naturally start to take care of ourselves more, because we know ourselves, and then we get to reflect on what we actually need. And that's why a lot of people say, I need a vacation. There's something about their current life that they're needing a vacation from. And so then they're finding balance on the vacation. People eat differently, they sleep differently, they do different things, they adventurous, all these different things. I think that's actually more of our true selves. Mm-hmm. But we don't, if we're still more, I don't live a life I need a vacation from. People ask me, when are you going on your next trip? I just travel because I want to. Okay. Not because I'm trying to decompress or de-stress. Mm-hmm. But this topic alone, that's why I'm super passionate about it. This topic alone has transformed how I am with everybody else because of how I am with myself. Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with the same sort of a lot of these topics. If you're letting your outside world and even your inside world control, and you're always reacting to things rather than going after things, it just gets overwhelming at some point. And people just live their whole life reacting to everything. Yeah. If your spouse and you getting an argument all the time, there's something underlying there that's causing that to happen. And if you're reacting, then they're reacting to your reaction, and then it just all escalates. Same thing with kids. Yeah. Same thing with work and all these things. So it's if you come from a place of acknowledging yourself and being still, you got to be still to get to know yourself. Actually get to know yourself. And it's so, I understand why, because we live busy lives and everyone's running 100 miles an hour all the time. But I run a pretty crazy life, a lot. Mm-hmm. I still make time for this because it is the most powerful thing for you. And people hear stillness and they think of like meditation, like Buddha meditation. I feel like that's what people go to, like the extreme. Whenever you talk about journaling, you talk about stillness, you're not talking about that. It doesn't have to be, it can be. And just like your breathing technique.
Yeah.
I realized whenever you talk through your breathing techniques in that episode, it's called box breathing is what you were saying, where you take in a breath for 10 seconds. I don't remember.
4. Yes. In for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4 and hold it for 4. And then in that same loop.
So I realized I actually have done that since I was a little kid. Every time I take a shower, before I get out of the shower, I had a fear of water. And so I would always put the water going over my head and just breathe, like deep breathing, and then get out of the shower. I've always done that since I was little. There was nothing prompting me to do that, but that's always been a moment for me to just be still for a minute, work on your breathing, and a lot of this comes back to breathing, I think. Like a lot of people, you're going 100 miles an hour. You can't take in deep, full breaths when you're running 100 miles an hour or running 5 miles an hour for that matter.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've learned doing running and doing distance running is like, you got to control your breathing.
Yeah.
And I was always a sprinter. I was always shortest distance as fast as possible. You don't got to worry about your breathing. You don't got to worry about anything. You just got to lean forward and not fall. That's all you got to worry about. With running longer distances, you got to worry about how you're placing your feet on the ground, because that repetitive movement over, 5 or 6 miles hurts you. Your breathing, if you don't breathe right and intentionally slow your breathing down and breathe in deep, you're going to be out of breath within a mile, Yeah. And so that's something that people can apply in any realm of their life. And using the shower example, before you get out of the shower at night, or in the morning or whenever you take your shower, whatever, take just a couple minutes and just breathe in deep. Like I saw something, you may be a little bit more scientific with this stuff, but I saw a study one time that said like people only breathe in about 20% of your lungs capacity of oxygen. Like when we're just talking, I'm not sitting here and going, in between each breath, so I whistled. That was cool. That was an inhale whistle.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sitting here like, breathing super deep. It'd be kind of weird if I was, we're having this conversation and I'm over here,
taking big breaths,
going crazy. You might think I'm hyperventilating or something over here.
Right.
But if you're in a still environment or in an environment where you can just breathe, like just let yourself breathe and intentionally bring your lungs completely full of air. It's a weird feeling because you never do it.
Yeah.
And whenever you start getting used to that, your lungs are like, let's do it, and then that can expand your lung capacity. And the more air you have, the better your brain functions.
Yeah.
And it just compounds from there. So you got stillness, you got breathing, and then just unplugging a little bit. Like you said it. That's one thing that I did make sure on our vacation. Yeah. Everything was still hectic because of it being crazy, but I just set my phone down. We had a little nightstand next to our bed, and I responded to people today that messaged me like last week.
Yeah.
And I intentionally put it to the side. Not that I wanted to ignore people or ignore clients or whatever, but I never, ever unplug. Never. I even brought my laptop with me because I had to edit a little project. But I used the evening time after the kids were laid down, all the things, just to finish that real quick. But I set my phone down, and Mary actually said something to me last night about vacation and vacations. She said, I think I like vacations because that's the only time that we really get all of you. Because I do set everything down and everything's there. And so that was like a revelation to me of like, I feel like I do a good job of like being a good dad, like being there with my kids, making time to play with them. I told you I have a rule. If my son ever comes up to me, I say my son because the girls just want to do girl things. So, Rylan, he'll come up to me and hey, Dad, you want to throw, play catch or play this video game with me for a minute or do whatever. And I will always say yes. Unless it is absolutely necessary for me to do whatever I'm doing at that time, I will always go do that. And maybe that made me kind of, you know, self-reflect a little bit. Like, am I not doing as good of a job at that? Or, you know, how could I do better at that? And, you know, just unplugging and setting my phone down when, you know, where I go home at night. And those messages can I have Bethany now to help me with messages. I'm still involved in doing it. So these are just things that, this is an ongoing process. Like everything else we talk about.
Everything is, yeah.
It's not like we have everything figured out and we're telling everyone what they need to do. It's just a practice of doing it. And we've seen the benefits of doing it and being still, even sitting here having a conversation like this. You know, we have to be still. We're sitting here on camera, but whenever we get going, it's just like me and you are sitting here. The cameras don't exist.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even be still and have an in-person conversation with anyone anymore. Yeah. You're always just texting someone, FaceTiming, and those are great tools that help us connect with people who we might not be able to connect with as much. Yeah. But like sitting down face to face and looking in your eyes right now, it's a different feeling than you sending me a text message on your way here, you know, or whatever the case is. So I feel like just slowing down, going back to the roots of being a human, you know, breathing, silence, face-to-face conversations, all this stuff compounds over time and just helps you elevate everything else in your life. You know, when the crazy times are crazy, you're better equipped to handle them. Yeah. You know, if you took off running right now, you've had surgeries on your knee, you got to work up to that. You know, people think of it as like, you know, the monk that's like doing the silence for a month or whatever. This is not that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about something that I think is really important for people to hear too. And it's some accountability, but it's also hopefully some grace, right? So quit holding so many grudges against yourself, a little bit more grace. But this idea of if we're not mentally somewhere, then we're never physically there either. So what Mary was really getting at was, even though you're physically with us, you're not completely mentally here. And that's just ownership of what are you actually thinking about? What are you doing? And this is where that like unplugging thing, if you kind of think about the only thing that gets unplugged is something that is plugged in. And so you think about a light bulb, you think about like eventually it will burn out, right? But we don't have to wait for burnout. We can turn it off whenever it's time to, we don't need that anymore. But when you're with your people and you're with the people that mean the most to you, if you aren't actually ever present with them, then you're never really committed to being still with them. And so maybe still for you in moments is playing catch. Kind of still of mind is also just as powerful as still of body. And for you to think integration, some of this to where like I have a lot of work to do. And this is something I'm always working on too, because I'm not building a life of sitting around. I'm building a life of going, but I also want to be a great partner to hopefully my family and, you know, the person that I get to be with. And, you know, I want her to always feel like I'm with her, you know, and Ryan Reynolds, I think her, Blake Lively, I think is who he's married to, but she said he's a movie star and he's all these things, but he's the most present man when he's with us. And I want all of the people in my life to always feel that. It's this sweet spot of always being available if you need me for the people that are, you know, in my circle, always available if you need me. But when I'm with you, I'm always only with you. And that's only because of how I think about you. It's only because I know how important being present actually is, not physically. And I had to do this with my family too. So, you know, my whole family lives in St. Louis, and being there isn't what they look forward to the most. It's actually me being present enough to be with them, to ask them questions, to sit in silence, not checking social media, not looking at all the things. And if I do for as much time as I need to, and then I move on. Because really the people that I'm there with are the only people that I would really pick up my, you know, I mean, I have like this small group of people that if they call me no matter what, I'm going to answer, right? Because I don't know what's going on. And we've kind of created this kind of space to where like I'm the always answer for some of those special people. But that doesn't mean that I'm not present. And so whenever I like go out to dinner with somebody, I literally have no idea who else is in the restaurant, which is an odd thing to say because I used to be distracted by people all the time. But you know that feeling too of when you're in the car and then you end up in St. Louis 2.5 hours later and you don't remember more than 30 seconds of the drive.
Right.
Right. So that's the brain like kind of taking over on autopilot. But the silence for me, I do the same thing in the car often. I know a lot of people do like podcasts. We're grateful for that.
Yeah.
But there's also like maybe being still for you is of mind first. And it's maybe for a shorter period of time. Maybe it's just on Mondays. And like you said, not comparing yourself to somebody who can sit in silence for 30 days in a row or sit in the cold plunge. And the thing is about being still is you start to learn that you're more in control of yourself than you give yourself credit for. Because sometimes life can feel out of control. You've already referenced it. It's chaos, it's busy, it's crazy, all the different words. Mm-hmm. But we start to lose our ability to really be confident that we're in control of how we actually feel. We're in control of when things get busy, do I know how to create stillness within myself? Not necessarily the other people around me are going to create stillness because that's not real. And another thing about stillness is chemically, right? So there's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin that comes whenever you do gratitude practices, when you meditate and all of that. And it's really just because it's the brain's most, it's the brain's most natural state is being still and being reflective. This communication and like our phones and all of that is a great way to connect, but it can't be the only time that we connect with anyone if we don't connect with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when people say like, when's the last time you felt joy? If you don't know that answer, it's probably time to like stop and reflect and think a little bit more about yourself a little bit more often. And again, like we've talked about, taking care of yourself allows you to take better care of the people around you. And so, you know, I hear a lot of times people say, I just need 5 minutes. Like, give me 5 minutes, you know, and I hear moms all the time say, I just give me 5. And then I'll be, and my sister, you know, everybody talks about it. And it's something to where we have to be willing to own when we're overstimulated and not blame other people for it. But it's also, how do we balance that out a little bit more? Because again, how you take care of yourself is going to directly lead to how you take care of other people. But if you never show stillness to yourself and you never allow stillness for other people, like we've talked about, when I was doing these podcasts by myself, I'm completely comfortable with that moment of silence. And it's not a delivery technique. It's just a nature of wanting to give to other people. And that's more conversational and some of those things. But even early on, you said to me, I had to go back and get rid of some of the and so's and the ums, and it's still part of kind of who I am and what I am, but I'm understanding now that it's not because I'm uncomfortable with it. It just actually helps my brain trigger, like get over the pause. Mm-hmm. But it's always something I'm working on. And different chapters of our life are going to require different levels of stillness. And it's also a matter of when you see somebody else struggling with being out of balance, being busy, being exhausted, you know, it's a matter of how can you lean in and help them show up in their own life with stillness, but how can you show them stillness? Instead of my friends going through something or my friends struggling, like let's distract them and go to the concert. Let's distract them. Maybe it's just being with, mm-hmm. right? And there's a really powerful, it came from the Bible and I can't quote it perfectly, so don't hang on this, but it's like, be still and know that I'm God. And there's this really interesting study of it was a small group that I was in, and they walk back that whole thing and eliminate one word at a time. So it's like, be still and know that I'm God. And then like get rid of the God and like, be still and know that I am. And then you keep going all the way back to where it says, be still. And then the first word of that is be. And that really hit me with, I'm constantly on the go about things, but really it's just like, just being where I am is really powerful. In the ways that I show up, right? And it gives me hope. It gives me encouragement because there's going to be times to where like we just need the silence. But if we're uncomfortable in it, we're going to unconsciously avoid it. Mm. So it's going to be uncomfortable to do the meditation. My meditation is really like a 10-minute, think about what I'm thinking about freely without judging it. 10 minutes, right? It's all it takes. 5 minutes, you could even do it. But it's really how is your body feeling? So kind of getting in touch with yourself. This is like through my meditation. It's not the pre-meditation. And then the meditation, the real goal is to be with yourself so that you understand that you control your own thoughts. Even if you need that, and people say, I'm detoxing from social media, I'm detoxing from whatever, from these people, from all these, it's so much of that is you just saying, I need to have my own thoughts, right? And so maybe that's the trigger for you to think, okay, I need to be more still so that I can get to know my own thoughts and be with myself a little bit more often. So that then you could show up for people in the most authentic way instead of, I've been around it. I've done it too, where I've kind of chameleoned, right? I went overseas and went to London and I started to talk like this, and I don't even know why, but like, I just recognized that I wanted to relate.
Yeah.
And there's something about just being your authentic self, but it comes with being still. And there's ways, so we often seek this external movement and this stimulation to either mask or produce something that we want to feel in ourselves, right? So it's like, I'm going to go get ice cream because I'm anxious, or I'm going to drink wine because I'm worried, right? All these different things. We seek the external thing. But our bodies are really, really incredible about being still enough to create those own things. Our brain doesn't know the difference. I saw something the other day, it just made me laugh, and made me actually now thinking about this. Like, when my brain figures out the difference between a tiger attacking me and an email, because our brain doesn't know that well, right? And so if you can be in control of your thoughts all the time, you will feel very different. You will see the world very different. You'll see the relationships very differently. You'll be less triggered. You'll be less reactive. All the things that people say that they want to be. You'll be more grateful naturally. You'll be more pleasant, more patient, more optimistic, more hopeful, just because you're more of you. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is that acceptance that the habits that we've developed to survive in the busy times, we have to understand if we want something different, the habits that we've had to survive are not going to be the same habits that we've needed to thrive. And so if you can find that and convince yourself that stillness, like you've talked about, is the habit that may actually help you thrive more, instead of this badge of honor, I can multitask, I can always go, I don't need any sleep, I just live on caffeine, like that people do. And they're like, wow, look at the productivity and look at all these things. Like, we start to earn success because of how much we're doing. But the real success is recognizing in us actually being. And you hear celebrities, and Jim Carrey even talks about this. He said, I hope everybody gets the chance to accomplish everything they've always wanted, to realize that it's actually where they are now is where they're going to find happiness. And happiness comes from stillness. Happiness comes from awareness. Mm-hmm. Again, that stillness thing, for me, I used to always have music playing whenever I was working on podcast content or working on keynotes and doing different things. But now, because of some of this work that we've been talking about today, I actually just sit in what other people would think of as silence, but it's actually my creative, clarity, focused space, to where my brain is unidirectional in those moments, to where I'm only thinking about the clients I get to talk to, the lives I want to make a difference in. The words come to my brain quicker, because when I'm listening to a song, there's always something there, or I'll start tapping and all these other things. But I had to learn like what works for me. So some people, it may not work for them to work in some of these stillness environments. And I know some people can't sleep without a fan on. They need white noise. They need a rain. They need a jungle. They need the ocean.
Isn't that crazy? They can't even sit in silence while asleep.
Correct.
Yeah.
They can't go to sleep without sound, which I'm not judging anybody, but it's also like, maybe that's a moment of, what about the silence are you avoiding? And it's just owning that piece. And it's probably have a conversation with somebody about, when you're in those moments, what are you thinking about? When you start to practice being still and you think, okay, I'm just going to sit here for 5 minutes, and you think, okay, how long has it been? And you look and it's been 30 seconds. It gets uncomfy. That should be a pretty good sign that you probably need to work on this. Mm-hmm.